Hello, this is Hot Culture TV, the show where we explore the latest cultural issues in Canterbury. I'm Ben Ashton.
And I'm Vanessa Chalmers. Coming up on today's show,
we'll be taking a look at Canterbury's current hot culture, including the recent developments on busking guidelines being proposed by the council.
Also, we will be finding out more on how graffiti artists operate in and around the city.
But first up, many young males adopt the lifestyle and behaviours often defined as lad culture by the media. Ladism, associated with heavy drinking, sportsmen and inappropriate behaviour, is particularly rife on university campuses.
However, it is creating issues that some higher education institutions are failing to recognise. Chloe Flood reports.
Lad culture is widely defined as a group of men who have a pack mentality and are often accused of misogyny and homophobia. More than a third of women on university campuses have reported suffering unwelcome advances in the form of groping, touching and verbal assault, a new study by NUS has found. 60% of students are unaware of reporting procedures, and universities have since been accused of not acknowledging the growing impact of lad culture.
It's not just the unwanted sexual advances that are a problem. Here in Canterbury, lad culture can actually encourage a bad attitude when it comes to drinking and alcohol, and this has led to groups of men being banned from certain bars and pubs here in the city centre, particularly sports teams from the local universities when they're on their socials.
At the Black Griffin pub, manager Samantha Casey thinks something should be done on a wider scale than just the usual bar and pub regulations.
I wouldn't say it's specifically men, but I have had issues with men in the Griffin. It's kind of what a lot of people do get in hospitality. And when it comes to a man being aggressive, it's okay sometimes because you can sort of talk to them and get them to calm down just by trying to be on the same level as them. But if another man tries to get involved, that's when it all sort of kicks off a little bit. When you're in a group, it's that sort of animal instinct thing where you think you can get away with it. So as a group of guys, if they're coming towards the bar and I'm on shift on my own, then it is quite intimidating.
The normalisation of this behaviour is a huge part of this problem. Awareness needs to be raised before results can be seen. Chloe Flood, reporting from Canterbury.
Reporter Chloe Flood is now joined live by Hannah Coles, the President of Welfare and Education at Canterbury Christchurch Student Union, to discuss lad culture here and if it's a recognised problem. Hello, Chloe.
Hi Ben, yeah, I've got Hannah up here with me now. So Hannah, what regulations does the SU actually have in place when it comes to lad behaviour?
So currently we have the zero tolerance and safe space policy, which has been in place since summer of 2014, and that helps students when they feel that they're being bullied, harassed, sexually, emotionally, physically or anything, and that's being put in place at the moment. We're also writing the procedures at the moment, and that will be based around the Good Night Out campaign, which is it's a website at the moment that a lot of unions use, and they pay a fee to them, and it gives them all the training purposes so we can help students.
Okay, and unis have actually been criticised for not doing enough about cases when they're reported. Do you think this uni does enough?
I don't think it does enough actually. The Students' Union does a lot more than they do personally. I've spoken to a lot of the high level sort of university lecturers and everything, and who I've spoken to personally agrees, and there could be a lot more that we could do together as a partnership and really push this zero tolerance. They have a zero tolerance policy themselves, but I don't really see much signposting or where the students can get that support.
And do you think it is males that are the problem, or do you think it is the society who sort of accept their behaviour is the problem?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. It can be the lads especially, because they can be a little bit more bolshy than women, but then the women they can both do the same sort of thing. But the community, I think it's just understanding that sometimes banter that males may come across quite bolshy or harassment, but it might simply not be the case.
Okay, thank you very much. That was really interesting. Back to the studio.
Thank you for that, Hannah. And Chloe.
Now, busking has always contributed to the culture and community of the city for many years, although this is recently being threatened after the noise, location and duration of their performances has caught the council's attention and prompted them to focus on more ways to restrict street performing. Katie Ager investigates.
The streets of Canterbury are always lined with buskers playing a variety of instruments on a daily basis, from beatboxers to accordion players, and many associate them with the culture of the city life. Daryl Quinn plays guitar and sings, whether it be outside of the cathedral or in the city centre itself. The guidelines that have been proposed by the Canterbury City Council would have an impact on musicians and the length of time that they are allowed to perform in one location. It would also mean that noise levels would be limited and those who use amplifiers would be majorly affected. But that doesn't bother him because he feels it's only fair to the local community.
For one, it's annoying for shops, because they're hearing the same thing over and over, day in, day out. And another thing, it's for other buskers, it's not fair, Like today, I'm having to pick spots where I never usually play because I know those guys have set up camp down there all day, and that guy set up camp up there all day, and they're using amps as well, which means you can't be within 200 metres of them without being drowned out.
It's not just Daryl who feels this way, as many other buskers have complained that they cannot compete with those using amplifiers, and that it takes away from Canterbury's natural culture. There were fears among musicians that the possibility of new guidelines would scare away new buskers to the city.
The Canterbury City Council have said that no guidelines have actually been introduced at this stage, and the attention given to the issue has been blown out of proportion. It was only looked at in the view of local residents and businesses in the area following public nuisance complaints. Buskers should continue to thrive in the city of Canterbury, and any potential guidelines would only encourage buskers to interact with their audience.
If they did come into effect, it would help me and other people like me, as I don't use an amp or anything.
Katie Ager reporting from Canterbury.
That's the latest update. Reporter Katie Ager is now joined live by Canterbury musician Ben Pugh to discuss the current situation on busking in the city. Hello, Katie.
Hello, I'm here with Ben now. So Ben, you perform with Davy Jones's Locker. So tell us more about that. What do you do exactly?
Well, I am merely a performer. I basically just perform, and I do pieces with other people. So I do, for example, today I'm doing a gig with them, and basically I'm doing this piece called 5 Impressions for Flute and Tuba, and basically there's a flautist playing alongside me, and then I'm doing a solo piece, and that's all there really is to it, really, for me. In terms of, I don't actually organise the events or anything like that. That's all up to Tanya. But yeah, I only perform.
So do people approach you to make a booking, or do you make your own inquiries?
I was actually approached by the organiser because I went to one of their concerts before, like one of their living room concerts, and I told the organiser that I was a tuba player, and she was saying that she was interested in doing work with me, and she would get back to me to it, and of course she got back to me eventually.
So what do you think of the buskers in Canterbury? Do you think they have a positive or a negative impact on the city?
I think a very positive impact on the city, because I think the culture in Canterbury really relies on the smaller things rather than the bigger things. And I think having music all around us is it's very good, because it just incorporates a really positive culture.
Thanks very much for joining us today, Ben. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for.
That's okay.
Back to the studio with Vanessa and Ben.
Thank you very much to Katie, and also to Ben for coming in to discuss the ongoing issue.
Tell us what you think about busking by tweeting us at _hotculture. Is it a nuisance, or what brings life to Canterbury? Jen Ives says there are some buskers that are part of the city, and it would be sad to see them leave.
And Elliot Deacon says, don't mind in the slightest. It's nice to hear music as you walk through the town.
Now, the debate as to whether graffiti is art or vandalism has been going on for many years, with more than a third of people believing that police should be harsher on offending artists, according to research by Hot Culture.
Helping us to shed some light on the debate in Canterbury, Alex Duggan reports.
Graffiti is defined as writing or drawings scribbled, scratched or sprayed illicitly in a public place. Covering darkened corners of Canterbury, to some it is an eyesore, to others these are the starting points of artists in the making. According to the law, graffiti is illegal. Under the Criminal Damage Act of 1971, graffiti artists can be fined up to £5,000 or face a jail sentence of 10 years. However, there is one place in Canterbury where artists can graffiti without fear of prosecution. Canterbury City Council has provided a legal graffiti wall just outside of Wincheap, Although it exists, it's almost impossible to find. This is Canterbury's only legal graffiti wall. As you can see from the point of view shot we took earlier, it's quite hard to get here. You have to climb through a field, a fence, and getting here in the first place was complicated. However, we came here 2 weeks ago and the wall has changed completely since then. It's been used many times, and this shows that it's popular and in demand. Perhaps if the council took up more projects like this, we would have less of a problem with illegal graffiti in Canterbury. Based in the Marlow Arcade is the Artique Gallery that holds work showcasing artists who began on the streets, such as Gabe Leonard. Gareth Williams, gallery manager, believes that if there were more outlets for graffiti, it may just take it off of the streets.
If the street artists did know, then maybe they'd use that rather than actually doing it on a building that doesn't want the art on it. But the council could work with what's happening in society and give them avenues to release it. So bike parks and skate parks, as soon as they built a few of those, all the kids went off the streets with their skateboards and rollerblades. So give them an avenue to go down, they'll abuse it.
This is Alex Duggan reporting for Hot Culture in Canterbury.
Thank you to Alex for that insight into graffiti around Canterbury. Reporter Alex Duggan is now joined live by Christchurch senior art lecturer Brian Hawkins to discuss how he believes graffiti is perceived by society. Hello, Alex.
Hi there, thanks Ben, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
My first question for you is, to what extent would you say that graffiti has now been accepted as a form of modern art?
Yes, well I think it comes from quite a long way back. I think it comes from the early 20th century when artists began to be interested in, outside of the academy, they began interested in non-professional artists, in direct expression. But I think it's really been cemented probably around the 1980s by artists like Jean-Michel Basquiat in New York, who was initially a graffiti artist but became a gallery artist. And his work moved, as it were, from the street into the gallery. That and the graffiti nature of his art was seen as a fundamental characteristic of his art. And I went to a show of his in London at the Serpentine Gallery, and it was an incredibly lively, interesting event. So I think it is established as part of the kind of vocabulary of contemporary art.
Yeah. What would you say it distinguishes then, factors that distinguish between graffiti being art or vandalism? Is it place? Is it focus?
Well, I suppose the easy answer is attitude. What different people have different attitudes towards it. And I suppose another relatively easy answer is that art will tend to be associated with galleries and museums. I have the feeling that a lot of graffiti artists don't particularly want to be associated with art, so I think it's not up to art to just claim graffiti art. I think graffiti art claims its own independence to some extent as well, yeah.
What would you say that councils could do to help get artists from the street into galleries? Is there anything they could do to encourage that?
Yeah, that's assuming that they want to go into galleries. But I think in relation to this, it's probably dialogue. I think that generally speaking, perhaps, the authorities and the young authorities tend to do things for the young. But I think it would be better to have a meaningful dialogue.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all we've got time for today. Thanks
Okay.
very much for coming in. And thank you. Back to the studio with you, Ben.
Interesting opinion there from Brian Hawkins.
Very interesting indeed.
Thank you for sharing with us. We will be hearing more about this debate in our next show with Nikki and Callum.
Unfortunately, that's all from us here at Hot Culture. Thank you for watching and keep updated by following us on Twitter at _Hot Culture. Goodbye from me, Ben Ashton.
And goodbye from me, Vanessa Chalmers.